The most dangerous alien is not the one who invades, it's the one who never asks for consent. Midday in New Mexico feels like glass under the sun. The white dishes of the VLA turn together, silent like a flock of giant birds changing direction. Inside the control room, Mira Hale leans her forehead on the desk. In her headphones, 5 tones repeat. 1 deep note, then 4 that spiral into the golden ratio. It feels endless, as if someone out there knows exactly how to catch her attention, give her order, and make her wonder if she's free or already being led. She cross-checks: solar noise cleared, ionosphere winds cleared, civilian radar cleared. What remains is too neat: zebra stripes on the spectrum, as if a ruler has been laid across the silence of the universe. She opens a new log, types a plane name, Beat 57. It's just the detection number and her heartbeat, ticking faster each time the signal grows stronger. The back door opens, a guest badge. Arden Kale steps in, moving like he already knows every corner of this room. No cologne, only the smell of hot desert dust on his coat. His eyes sweep the spectrum, skipping greetings, skipping name tags, like he reads people through keystrokes and breath, not letters. "That's an invitation," he says, flat voice, no echo. "And the window to answer will close faster than you think." He sets a small silver dome on the table, smooth as liquid mercury. No seams, no edges. When powered on, it breathes, yes, breathes softly. The rhythm matches the first note of Beat 57. Talking by scanning DNA? Mira says, dry as the desert. Cute and rude. "The one language every living thing carries," Arden replies, "but it only opens if the person scanned says yes." He presses on the word yes, as if laying down a moral charm in the room. She doesn't smile, too smooth, too polished. How many of these invitations have you seen to sound so sure? She doesn't use the word alliance, though she hears it hiding in his pauses. Arden leans closer, light catching cold on his cheek. "Enough to know when to stay silent," he says, "and too few to know when to risk it." Mira looks at her hands. Short nails, faint calluses, years of tightening bolts with her father during desert storms. He used to say, "The array is the heart, the sky is the lungs. Listen to the signal, and you'll learn what it means to be human." Now he's gone. But she knows one thing: consent is not a magic word. It takes time, it takes doubt, it takes the right to say no. Your device stays on our local network. No cloud, no uploads, I verify it myself, and it doesn't touch anyone without a live signature. Her voice locks like a deadbolt. Arden nods, unfazed. "We'll do it your way," he says, "but when the window shuts, don't blame me when all we have left is silence." "I'm used to silence," Mira answers. That's where science begins. Evening falls. Shadows from the dishes sweep the desert like lazy clock hands. The team leaves. Mira spots Arden alone in a side storeroom. The bioprobe glows, its surface rippling like gooseflesh in cold air. Arden lays 2 fingers on it, head bowed, lips moving. Not English, not Spanish. Strange syllables flowing like current. From her distance, she can't hear the words. But the metal responds, the light shifting with his mouth. Not a command, a comfort. Part of her wants to record it, part of her hesitates. Maybe this is the only true thing today. A man, whoever he really is, trying to speak to something that could crush him in a blink. Night drops like a switch. Heat leaves the ground. Dry grass and cooled plastic fill the air. Beat 57 swells. The spectrum glows like sparks skating on oil. Mira pulls her chair closer, eyes closed, trying to separate their rhythm from her own. She thinks of Leela, her little sister, who wants every happening to become seen. She thinks of being called too blunt, too cold. The cost of asking questions is being blamed for ruining the party. Soft footsteps. Arden stands in the doorway, paper cup in hand. "Have you eaten dinner?" "Signals don't eat dinner," Mira says, opening her eyes. What do billionaires eat?" "Patience," he says, setting the cup down, "and other people's trust when we don't deserve it yet." It throws her for a moment. Confession or a line? She can't tell. She puts the headphones back on. Beat 57 syncs with the pulse in her neck. 5 beats, a pause, 5 beats. Someone out there is using her heartbeat to knock on her door. She wants to whisper no into the mic as a kind of reverse spell. But when her lips part, only silence comes. Don't say yes just to keep the peace, Arden says, like he read the emptiness in her throat. If you mean no, say it loud. Mira takes off the headphones, swivels her chair. What do you want from me, Arden Kale? Not from you, he answers calmly. From how you ask, I need someone still afraid of their own power. She looks out at the white dishes, faces lifted like listening eyes. Cold desert air drifts in through the open door. Out there, the 5 tones keep knocking. Mira types the final line of the day's log. No conversation is worthy if it begins with pressure. No discovery matters if it begins with fear. Click. Saved. In the corner of the screen, beat 57 shifts phase like a nod from far away. Arden says nothing more. He stands there with the right kind of silence, leaving her space wide enough to refuse and long enough to choose. The next morning, a makeshift conference room stood between 2 racks of humming machines. The VLA team sat in a half circle, Alvarez with his notebook, Chen with his laptop, Ortiz leaning on the wall pretending to yawn. In the center, the bioprobe rested like a drop of mercury that had learned to breathe. Arden placed 2 fingers on its edge. The surface rippled, a faint ring of light spreading outward, like water stirred by a passing breeze. Procedure, he said, voice steady. Consent, then scan, then lock. Without the first word, the other 2 are meaningless. A thin beam slid from his wrist into the air, freezing in place as a glowing map of epigenetic patterns. The room leaned forward in unison. Ortiz whispered, Jesus. Alvarez muttered, if it's that accurate, it could change preventive medicine forever. Mira didn't move. She had already wrapped the probe in a rough Faraday cage, blocking unregistered signals. Her logger tracked every data packet. And if we refuse, she asked. The word refuse snapped like a pebble against glass. The Alliance will still listen, Arden said, eyes fixed on the fading map, but the door will close quickly. The way he said Alliance sounded like home, not shelter, but default. He offered a demo. Mira pulled off her glove, bare wrist on the dome. Through my local network only. No cloud, she warned. And it only works when I press. Yes, he nodded, stepping back as if giving the stage to the person who mattered. She tapped the consent key. A narrow light slid over her skin. It didn't hurt, but it made her hair stand on end, like being seen by a sense that wasn't human. On her screen, golden dots appeared. The scar on her left knee at age 10, the metal dust exposure during her junior year internship, a gut bacterium that had flared and vanished on its own. All of it precise. So precise she felt smaller, like a city map blown up to reveal every back alley. Give me the API, she said. I need to verify independently. You'll have it, Arden replied. No argument, no sales pitch. Just one line left hanging like a warning or a vow. This isn't a project. It's a test of collective dignity. Mira shut the probe down, pulled the cable, checked the checksum. She tried to trick it with a fake consent key that mimicked her hand press rhythm. Nothing. The dome went dark, like a lake covered by clouds. She tried again with her digital signature. Still silence, waiting for the living pulse it had been promised. The feeling of being recognized by something uncopyable made her uneasy and reassured. A dishonest machine is always easy to fool. During the break, Arden answered questions with clipped, emotionless phrases. What is Ascent Dynamics? Just a name to cross borders. Where did you work before? Places that don't post job ads. Why choose us? Because of her. He pointed at Mira, like a man laying down a chess piece without covering his hand. The air grew heavier. Later, Mira noticed Arden's visitor badge had already changed, from Kale Foundation to Ascent Dynamics in half a day. A life lived on the surface like train station boards, always on time, always changing, never leaving a trace. That smoothness made her more wary than any obvious lie. The hallway was long, lit by white fluorescent stripes. Leela leaned against the wall, hiding her phone behind her back like a child hiding candy. But the glow lit her chin, a live stream app. "What are you doing?" Mira snapped, snatching the phone. One swipe was enough. Vla Secret, the golden beat, viewers climbing like a swarm of insects. "What did you just broadcast?" "You don't get it," Leela shot back. "People need to see what's happening. Your whole life, you've locked things away in boxes." Mira's knee throbbed, old scar at 10 years old flashing like a footnote. She remembered falling on rocks, not crying, grinding her teeth to prove she could be trusted. Leela had learned the opposite: cry loud enough to survive in a world that only looks at noise. "You want to be seen," Mira said slowly, "but that doesn't mean you get to show what isn't yours." "Then what is mine?" Leela's eyes glistened. "Am I yours?" The sharp hurt of someone always walking behind the one who knows how to endure. At the end of the hall, Arden leaned in the doorway. He didn't interrupt, didn't comfort. He watched the two sisters the way someone studies cracks in a bridge, knowing which would break under weight and which would close if left alone. Mira hated that look. Too professional to call compassion, too precise to call indifference. She handed Leela the phone, untouched. "Go to my room. Lock your account for 24 hours. After that, you'll tell me why you went live, and I'll tell you why I'm afraid." Leela froze, not a threat, an invitation. "Okay," she said, voice dropping like a tent pole lowered into place. When the door closed, Mira turned to Arden. "We'll add new security filters, and a new rule: every personal device in the lab gets labeled and logged." "You said it," Arden said. "I'll sign." "Sign as what? Billionaire or something else?" "As the one who will be fired first if that rule is broken," he whispered. For a moment, Mira saw his smooth layers shift, revealing real skin. Fear. Not fear of losing face. Fear of losing the right to help if he broke the law. That kind of fear, the right kind, touched her. But she still said, "Good, because I can't protect anyone if the most powerful person refuses to be bound." Arden nodded and walked away. Mira stayed under the flickering lights, smelling ozone from the air system and stubborn desert dust on his coat. She opened a new log. Consent key, live signatures, and the illusion of control. The first line typed itself. We think pressing a button is consent, but consent is a relationship between a person and fear, between knowledge and speed, between sisters who can hurt each other and still not let go. At the end, the cursor blinked. From the next room, the bioprobe gave a quiet breath, in rhythm with beat 57, and out in the desert, the door Arden had warned about was already starting to close. Slowly, slowly enough for the brave to step through, and for the hesitant to realize why they were still standing still. Night skies in New Mexico often feel like a giant well, black, deep, so still you forget it never stops moving. At midnight, the well rippled. Mira didn't see it with her eyes, but on the monitor, beat 57 stretched, like a guitar string tuned up a single notch. From the VLA to the abandoned land out west was only a 40-minute drive, but it felt like heading toward an answer already written. Her job now was simply to be brave enough to read it. Arden rode shotgun, quiet the way people get when every word could become an excuse. Sometimes he glanced out at the milk-pale sweep of the Milky Way on the windshield. Then he checked the bioprobe in its carry case, a silver dome holding its breath, pulsing now and then as if syncing to a distant heartbeat. Alvarez and Chen followed in the car behind, headlights carving pale steps in the desert. Leela insisted on coming to hold the light. Her voice shrank when Mira didn't argue, maybe because Mira had no energy left to fight, or because some part of her wanted a distraction from the thought growing louder. If that thing is a person, that person is falling. They stopped at a lot that used to be a factory yard. Cracked concrete, tufts of weeds, a rusted no trespassing sign tilted like a dead man's nameplate. On the horizon, a glow didn't drop like a rock. It settled like a feather, slow, steady, casting no shadow, just thinning the air until Mira's ears popped from the pressure change. When it touched down, the whole place exhaled, ozone, wet metal, the smell of something freshly unboxed. The object, carry-on sized, rested on the concrete. Simple shape, scary on purpose. It vibrated with a rhythm that wasn't a human heartbeat, not a machine cycle either, more like a drowsy, dreaming pulse. Leela pressed behind Mira. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Mira almost said, "Beautiful is the most dangerous word tonight," but didn't. She reached out, pure instinct, and Arden caught her wrist. "Don't," he said. "Quarant." He swallowed the last syllables like he was holding back another instinct. Mira stepped back and made herself busy. Alvarez, perimeter markers. Chen, logger up. Ortiz, grab air sample bags. Arden set the bioprobe down, popped out 3 little feet like a creature finding purchase. Non-contact mode, he told it, as if to a friend. A nearly invisible wash of light moved out. Gooseflesh ran from Mira's wrist up her arm like a cold ant. Numbers spilled across the screen, biologically compatible, inert to Earth microbes, no hazardous decay signal, low internal heat. Mira let a breath go. If this was a package, the sender had thought about the damage simple presence could cause. "No unsealing," Arden said, eyes on the readouts. "We don't have the right." "I know," Mira answered, surprised that she meant it. She wanted the secret like any scientist who's waited too long. But something else had grown in her since the probe arrived, the ability to stop, not from fear, out of respect. Respect for what existed in there and for herself. Footsteps, very soft, then more, no headlights, shapes peeled from the factory's shadows like ink spreading on wet paper. Fogged plastic respirators, caps pulled low, short-range stun guns in hand. The way they split into teams, the way one left hand swept in a half-moon while the right kept distance, the way another dragged a thin cable toward an empty case, it all said, not amateurs. They handled bio-capture like lifeguards handle harnesses. "Genome bizarre," Arden said, like delivering a verdict. No outrage, no surprise, just a steel-cold fact. The gene hunters had smelled fresh goods. One of them nodded at the bioprobe with professional interest. He'd seen one before. Mira slid half her body between them and the silver dome without thinking. The leader tugged his mask down halfway and smiled, 3 silver fillings flashing. He tilted his head as if at a friendly meet and greet. "MS. Hail," he said. "Long time no see. Correction, never officially met. I'm Gideon Wick, free-range science, entrepreneur in the creative bioeconomy." He sounded like a bar at 1 a.m., where people have had just enough to believe their own introductions. Mira froze for a beat. A real name, he wasn't afraid to show it, which meant he knew she knew him and had priced TH. Back in school, Wick was expelled for plagiarism, then disappeared. Now he was back, clean as a reprinted page, the 3 fillings the only footnotes left. "Leave the package," he said, politely, like asking for an umbrella. "We have an order. Tight window, you know how it is." Arden stood. "Whose order?" "If you built that silver cage," Wick nodded at the probe, "you already know buyers don't show themselves. But you're asking the right question. I'm just the arm. The real clients paid up front." The phrase up front sent a cold line down Mira's spine. "What do they want to do with it?" she asked before she could stop herself. Wick smiled a city smile. "MS. Hail, not every question earns a free answer. But since you insist they want to look like you, they're just willing to pay more." That was enough, not research. A market. Somewhere lit, soft music, expensive drinks, gentle politics. In the middle, a person, if a person lay inside, opened like a display. Arden raised his hand, palm up, voice measured like he was in a boardroom. We can deal, you don't have to take it now. Give me 10 minutes to scan the surface. No opening, we'll pay you more than you're being paid to wait 10 minutes. Wick eyed the bioprobe the way people eye a Stradivarius, priceless and hard to steal. He shrugged. 10 minutes is a lifetime. He lifted his right hand. A dry bang snapped the air. No flash, just force. Mira stumbled back as if both ears had been slapped. The air turned into a wall of dust, swallowing shapes, warping sound. Alvarez cursed, his voice stretched and snapped. Chen hit the ground, clutching his rig, eyes blown wide like he'd seen what would keep him awake for years. Through the dust, Mira saw figures surge forward. A cable latched onto the case. Another hook snagged the bioprobe. Mira threw her shoulder over it, her arm buzzing numb. Someone yanked her collar from behind. She smelled melted plastic and a stranger's sweat. She swung at empty air, glanced off a body she couldn't name. Everything smeared like charcoal in the rain. In that storm of grit, Leela vanished. The dust settled faster than Mira expected. Desert knows how to reset the stage. The concrete lay bare, a few cables sticking up like torn roots. The bioprobe remained, Arden had held on, but the case was gone. Ortiz's nose bled. Alvarez kept saying black powder smell. Chen checked the logger and went pale. Minutes of data were blank, like someone had hit pause and never hit play. Where's Leela? Mira spun once, then again, a top without a pin. No one answered. No Mira came back. Just unnamed footprints running in every direction like veins that refused to point to a heart. Arden moved fast, around broken door frames, his flashlight leaving short white cuts in the dark. Leela, Mira shouted. Her own voice echoed back as if it belonged to someone else. For a few seconds, she told herself Leela was just hiding behind a column, playing some dumb game to force her to act like a person, not a scientist. But people don't vanish from a flat slab of concrete. Little sisters don't turn into dropped calls because of one soft blast. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A message. A photo, Leela tied to a plastic chair, a wrist cuff glowing green LEDs around and around like a taunt, tape over her mouth, eyes wide, angry and afraid, both telling Mira she was still Leela, still fighting even when there was nothing left to fight with. Under it, one line, no dot, no extra words. Bring the probe seed key to Santa Fe 0230, 1 for 1. Arden came to her side. He didn't say, let me see. He let Mira decide to hand him the phone. She did. He studied the photo without blinking, then the text a moment longer, like there was a map behind the letters only he knew how to read. That cuff, Mira said, her voice stripped of surface. What type? Wrist model, SpO2, heart rate, possible pain pulse, private network control. It can be, he cut himself short, removed if we get close. We're not getting close, Mira said, biting the knot like biting her tongue to stay awake. We're going to Santa Fe. It came out like a decision she'd signed long before she knew she had. Arden nodded. Santa Fe is one of their drop sites. Pretty galleries upstairs, basements underneath. They love art, beauty hides things well. Mira almost laughed. Half the world is built to hide the other half. Her last log line flickered in her head. Consent is a relationship. Here, it had been twisted into a weapon. Tie Leela to a chair, strap a cuff on, then demand Mira's signature, the signature of a person with no choice left. Seed key, Mira said, turning the word like a bitter pill. If I bring it, they open our genetic library like a convenience store. She looked at Arden. If I don't, they open Leela in other ways. Arden didn't touch her. He knew distance was a kind of respect. There's a third way, he said, no smugness, just the tone of someone who'd counted the risks and knew which words had to be exact. But it requires something I avoid, breaking rules. A tiny click went off in Mira's head, the sound of a bolt sliding free. Her body felt suddenly hollow, as if someone had swapped her air for something more flammable. She saw Leela behind the tape, eyes full of anger and pleading. Not save me because I'm innocent, but save me because I'm still me, even when I'm dumb. She turned to the team. Alvarez, call 911 for an unknown blast, don't mention the package. Chen, dump every log to offline, check for any leak on the local net. Ortiz, gear room, 2 more headlamps, a multi-tool with the thinnest blade. She paused, corrected herself before handing power away by habit. Arden, call the people you trust to show up without paperwork, and show me what the bioprobe can do besides its staged tricks. What do you want it to do? He asked. Nothing lethal, Mira said. But if it can blind a camera for 5 seconds, misroute a signal for a minute, or cool a cutting burn for 10, tell me. And tell me the risks, every single one. Arden nodded, truly nodded, like a subordinate nods to a lead when the lead has earned it by method, not by rank. It can drop an ion drizzle, he said, to neutralize some gases. It can throw a very narrow band jam, like setting a rock in a stream. It can read a wrist cuff if touched for 3 seconds, but it won't crack it without a consent key, even if the cuff is delivering pain. Mira closed her eyes for 1 second. It sounded like enough, or not, depending on the rest of the night. She opened them as someone else, the person who decides. To Santa Fe, she said, we're not bringing the seed key, we're bringing an answer. Arden looked at her longer than needed, as if saving the moment somewhere beyond memory, a pin on his inner map of people who dare to do the right thing while knowing it could still be wrong. He didn't ask the old, useless question, are you sure? He said, I'll drive. Mira nodded. Before heading to the car, she looked back at the concrete. Where the case had been was a dark cradle shape. She wanted to set a choice there, like laying a newborn in a crib so it remembers the first place it ever rested. She had no other choice than to carry a choice into Santa Fe, protect Leela without selling Earth. The engine turned. Gravel hissed under the tires. Behind them, the VLA kept its white faces lifted to the sky. Beat 57 hissed in her headphones like a reminder. The golden rhythm was still there. Still patient, still waiting. But tonight, another rhythm had cut in. The fast, hard beat of a negotiation with no time on either side. Between those 2 tempos, Mira sat upright, fingers tight on the seatbelt, watching Santa Fe's lights appear ahead like a string of consent keys. Each street lamp a small question. Yes or no. And this time, the answer wouldn't be a simple tap. Night in Santa Fe smells like pine and wet plaster. Along Canyon Road, adobe galleries stay open late for an opening night. Red wine glides between oil paintings with skies bigger than the real one outside. Bronze statues keep quieter than the women whispering beside them. Upstairs, art. Downstairs, product. Mira and Arden stand in the dark between 2 windows, listening to the clink of glasses, polite noise covering the thrum of air compressors under the floor. Freight entrance on the side, Arden says, eyes tracking a worker pushing a wooden crate. The bioprobe is hidden in a crate too, just another harmless object, a sleeping silver dome in a bed of sawdust. Mira doesn't answer. She keeps her heartbeat steady by counting metal steps. The basement opens like the mouth of a well. Thick green LEDs, no warm light anywhere. They pass rows of tissue tanks with handwritten labels, star eyes, cancer filters, immune modulators. The tissue glows like lonely moons. Each tank has a tiny screen drawing a curve, the lifeline of something that hasn't decided who it is. Wick is waiting in a room so big the silence echoes. He sits cross-legged on a bar stool, a thin watch on his wrist like a bare nerve. Behind him, Leela is tied to a chair. A wrist cuff circles her arm, green LEDs spinning and blinking like a night Beatles song. Consent? Wick smiles, breath warm with wine and bravado. Expensive word for poor people. Down here, we sell what folks need when a doctor says, I'm sorry. We say yes for a price. Heat rushes through Mira like someone opened a valve. Consent for sale, she says, breaking each word, isn't consent. Wick shrugs like a man dismissing a definition. I'm not selling the word consent. I sell hope, and every dictionary bows to that. He flicks his watch. A chip of diamond flashes like an exclamation point. Let's negotiate. Seed key. Arden steps half a pace forward, palm open, voice smooth enough to pour tea. Trade quietly. You keep part of your deposit, you return the girl. Nobody upstairs knows. No cameras, no trail. Wick laughs and shakes his head the way people pity a polite offer. Trading people for money? Old play. The seed key opens the Earth's genetic library, biggest convenience store in biology's history. I don't swap a dream for crumbs. Mira looks at Leela. Her sister keeps her eyes wide so long Mira fears her lids will jam, anger, fear, shame holding them open. The cuff's LEDs slice a cold green line across her pupils. Two short truths hit Mira at once. Give the key equals betray humankind. Don't give the key equals betray family. Both true, neither enough to decide. Arden leans to her ear, voice stripped of any disguise, low, rough, a string held too tight for too long. I have a third way, he says. I break my own rules. Cost? Mira asks, eyes still on Leela. Losing the right to act, maybe getting removed, maybe never going home. He says home like a man who chose one half of the sky for a house and the other half only with papers. Mira nods, small but real. Do it. Wick lifts a hand. Two heavy men pull Mira and Arden apart. A third raises a stapler gun look-alike and grins. Don't touch the bioprobe, Wick warns, eyeing the dome like a rare animal. It's the one thing I don't own yet. Arden lowers the crate, peels it open, shows half the dome, still obedient as a sculpture. He places two fingers on the rim and whispers that language, the one that raised Mira's skin back at the VLA stairs. The silver surface breathes deep. No flash, no smoke, only a change you notice with the nose. Ozone thins, the sweet anesthetic in the air tears like a veil. Ion drizzle isn't something you see, it's molecules changing sides without holding signs. A wall sensor beeps, its air quality line drops. The stapler gun man coughs hard, blinking like he just chewed pepper. Wick grimaces. What's that smell? He looks at the probe, gets it, he's not stupid, and jerks a signal. Now, Arden says, Mira bolts to Leela. The multi-tool snaps open like fingernails on glass. The cuff has a narrow seam, just enough for the thin blade. She slices the nylon outer skin, thick as a fish that knows how to change itself. Leela moans through the tape. The green LEDs quicken like a sprinting heart. 3 seconds, Arden calls, steady as a ruler. Touch the probe to the cuff. Mira doesn't ask why, she taps the inner cuff with the dome fast. Cold light runs through her glove like someone poured a thin river into her blood. The probe reads the lock. It doesn't break it, just learns the rhythm, the way a musician listens long enough to know where the note will slip. Back, Arden says. She pulls away. He presses a pinhead on the dome. A narrow band jam hums, no color, only seen by the way the cuff's LEDs hesitate for a heartbeat. Cut. Mira lets training take over, quick, clean, at the joint. The blade slides easier than she feared. The cuff squeals, thin as a prop, crying. Green dies. A red LED tries to wake and misses, pushed off by the jam. Leela grunts through tape, eyes sparking like a cat clawing out of a sack. Across the room, Wick understands. His glass hits the floor, signal given. 2 men charge, one slams straight into Arden. The probe thickens its ion rain. Their pepper spray turns into weak lemonade. A ceiling light stutters. Vent fans roar on, helpfully pulling the ion fog across the room, like handing out a free truth. Poison is just a molecular arrangement, and arrangements can be renegotiated. Leela jumps up. Mira rips the tape free, yanks her toward the exit. Don't look back. She shouts, cliché, but tonight it's a safety mode. Of course Leela looks. She needs proof her sister isn't leaving anything that matters. Mira leaves nothing human. She leaves the sky's suitcase. Her choice isn't back there, it's breathing beside her. Arden backs them up, body between the sisters and the room. Wick hits a switch under the table. A metal shutter drops over the main door. "We've got one more," Arden says, eyes on the ceiling. HVAC shaft. Mira stares at the tiny square vent. "Seriously, not us the arm. Lift the probe. It'll jam the sensor and force the emergency egress." He fires instructions like mechanics tossing tools under a car. Mira and Leela heave the dome up to the vent grill. The probe vibrates, listening hard. A hiss runs through the duct. A back exit pops, one of those doors that exist only on technical drawings. Not pretty, wide enough for people, narrow enough for egos to duck. They sprint through. Behind them, Wick scoops the case off a steel tray. He hasn't forgotten the main prize and slips toward the loading door. His footsteps are different from his crew's, light, fast, local. A part of Mira wants to spin and take the case. The larger, clearer part knows what's needed is already in her hands. The stubborn, secret part records his route like a debt map for later. Cold iron stairs. 6 flights. Leela's breath saws the air. Mira clamps her hand, thinking nothing, because sometimes emptiness is fuel. Arden runs last, rolling the probe like a silver ball, laying a thin wake of jam that nudges chasing feet 3 steps off every few seconds. The steel door bangs open. They burst into the gallery's back lot. Trash bins stacked like walls, the sky dropping like a cut. Mira shoves Leela behind a delivery truck, slides along a planter, tucks into a wall's shadow. Out front, alarms wail. Arden must have tripped a bypassed pull station as they ran. She hadn't seen it. Upstairs, people spill like ink in water, wine spills, faces flush from surprise, not fear. Truck, Arden points. A private ambulance sits 2 alleys away. Mine. Mira doesn't waste a "why do you have everything?" She pushes Leela into the back seat and slams the door. The smell, cheap antiseptic and new plastic, calms her. Everything is labeled here. On the road, Leela hiccups, swallows it, turns her face to the window, tears running quietly. Mira wants to say the formula, "I'm sorry." The only true thing is simpler. She came. Arden slides into the driver's seat and taps the siren low. They glide. In the mirror, his face is colorless, not from fear of them, but from consequences falling out of the sky and sticking to him like dust that won't brush off. "You're shaking," Mira says, the dumbest sentence of the night. "Because of consequences," Arden answers, eyes on the road. "Not them, my people." A beat, then the line every mask dreads but longs to say, "I'm not from Earth." Leela whips around, eyes wide like she swallowed a star. Mira isn't as shocked as she expected. The pieces had already clicked. This just named the picture. "I'm an envoy of the Concord of Orbits," Arden says, the word Concord round and heavy, like a pebble held long in the mouth. "And tonight I tore my own charter. The bioprobe isn't allowed for internal interference on a non-member world. I used it. I'll file the report. I may lose the right to stay when the decision window opens." "For us?" Leela asks, voice cracked between accusation and gratitude. "For you still being you," Arden says, not looking back. "Even when you're reckless." He says it like he said it before to someone else, under a different sky, too late. Mira looks at the silver dome on the floor, breathing gently in step with the siren. She thinks about the way it touched the cuff, didn't break, just listened, then nudged the beat aside long enough for the blade. She thinks about her own line, "No conversation is worthy if it begins with pressure." Tonight, they used pressure to free someone from pressure. Tonight, she owes herself an answer. Where is the line between saving a person and saving a principle when every door is closing? Wick took the case, Mira says, reading the unsolved part out loud. "He'll open it somewhere, before or after the sale." "Before," Arden says. "His buyers want proof. He'll open it where he feels safest. Maybe under a famous tower everyone treats like scenery, or in an abandoned church where sound isn't suspicious. Devil's Tower, Mira says, not sure why the name stabs out clean. Leela inhales to argue, then truth doesn't need debate. The ambulance swings onto a wider road. Outside, Santa Fe slides by like a silent movie, curved adobe, warm string lights, knife-cut shadows. Inside, 3 people sit between antiseptic and plastic. One just escaped a glowing LED blade. One just switched sides without knowing if the new side will keep him. One just decided that sometimes consent isn't a signature, it's the nod you give when you look each other in the eye. Mira sets her hand over Leela's. Leela doesn't pull away. Up front, Arden's shoulders loosen on a long exhale, not relief, acceptance. The night isn't done. Half the story still rides inside a missing case. But the first act, the hardest, has set. They chose people first, keys after. Because of that, they now have the standing to talk about consent with anyone proud enough to believe in it. The siren dies. They slide into the shadowed lot of a field clinic. Mira frees Leela's straps and lets her head fall onto her shoulder. Before the door closes, she looks at Arden. "Tomorrow," she says, "you'll teach me how you write a report when you decide to break rules." "Tomorrow," he answers, a tired edge of a smile, "you'll teach me how you keep rules and still save someone." The door shuts. Outside, night wind carries pine, kind as a hand on the back. Inside, a story has stepped over a threshold, leaving behind iron stairs, broken glass, ion rain smell, and an unspoken promise. From now on, every key will turn only in a human hand that knows which door it's opening. The field clinic duty room smelled like disinfectant mixed with cold coffee. A scent that promised safe and confessed helpless at the same time. The tube light flickered with a tired heartbeat. Leela slept on a folding chair. The cuff marks were still on her wrist. Every time she turned, a pale band rose like chalk. Mira pulled a wool blanket over her shoulders and wondered why the biggest choices in life always happen among cheap things. Paper cups, plastic curtains, a dry marker. Arden sat across from her holding a coffee he didn't drink. He turned his guest badge over and over like a man worrying a passport about to expire. When he began, his voice didn't tell a story. It traced a wound. "Thalassa sent a rhythm like beat 57, he said. "We argued for 72 hours. Who holds consent, who oversees, who's liable if it goes wrong." During that time, the black market upgrades spread like fire in a greenhouse. They edited immunity with cheap enzymes, sold night vision to miners, injected extra red blood cells into kids who ran mountain roads. It all looked good, until bodies started treating orders like memories. By the time Concord landed, Thalassa was a field where one season lasted a lifetime. Mira said nothing. Now she understood why Arden clutched rules the way a sailor grips a rail in a storm. He had lost someone to a fake consent squeezed by despair and sold by the clever. "Since then I don't break laws," Arden said, "and I underestimate every civilization outside the gate." He set the cup down. It wasn't loud, but it was heavy enough to change an orbit. "Until tonight," Mira said softly. "Until tonight," he repeated, signing a statement to himself. A metal cart rattled down the hall. Mira opened her laptop. The cursor blinked like the breath of someone waiting for an answer. She pulled up a blank page and typed a title, GCA Genetic Consent Accord. A plain name like tape on a cut. It won't heal you now, but it can keep the wound from turning toxic. "Principle 1, she said, typing as she spoke. "The person presses their own consent key. No proxies, no defaults. Any scan, storage, or processing without a direct press is void." Arden didn't cut in. He listened the way you listen to an old language finally pronounced right. "Principle 2, the right to withdraw." Data can be ordered forgotten by the person, even erased from all copies. Devices only remember when the person remembers. Agreed, Arden said at last, so gently it sounded like consent or a prayer. Principle 3, mixed oversight, half Earth civil representatives, half alliance, all meetings logged publicly in real time, no room dark enough to turn people into samples. Her hands shook a little, not from fear, but from knowing these words would leave this room and stand in the wind. Arden leaned over the screen for a long moment. No smile, no praise, just a breath shaped like a drop, the road the parliaments missed. Mira added an appendix. Genetic consent does not replace medical consent. Clinical work still follows local health law. Another appendix. No commercialization of consent. Any money or benefits to obtain it are void. Incentives can only be access, transport, translation, legal aid. You'll catch fire from both sides, Arden said. People who want it faster, and people who want it slower. A door only matters, Mira answered, if the latch is in our hand. Bip, her phone buzzed, unknown number, a link, short caption, Devil's Tower 1000, bring the seed key, or I open the case on live stream, under it a pulsing go live icon, an eye that blinked. Mira enlarged the preview. A dark room, the outline of a steel table, gloved silhouettes. In one corner, a pattern like columnar basalt, straight stone pipes, a fossilized organ. In her mind, she heard wind on a sheer rock face, birds circling, people below looking up. Wick picked something beautiful, Arden said after one glance, as if the tower was already stamped on a map inside his bones. Beauty makes proof easier to swallow. Think he can open it? Mira asked. Maybe. If the case is a cradle for a life that needs the right rhythm, he doesn't have it. So he'll use other levers, money, noise, fear. Mira gripped her phone. She pictured Wick counting down to camera, hundreds of thousands of viewers greasing their curiosity, comments rising like a dirty tide. Some would call it citizen science. Others would call it a party. Both wrong in the same way, calling open the same thing as no. We won't bring the seed key, Mira said. We'll bring your voice, Arden answered. She looked at him. Even expected. It hit her like a door flying open. The GCA? Yes. At the old gates, consent isn't a code. It's a condition spoken by a person as a person. You read the accord before the superprobe, if it exists under Devil's Tower like Stonehenge. The gate recognizes the terms, not a passcode. If the case holds something that needs a rhythm to be born, it will take hours, not the black markets. And if there's no super probe, she asked, then we still have a voice. Sometimes a voice at the right time buys a pause. 10 minutes of pause can be 10 years of life for a being waiting for the right room to take its name. Mira looked at Leela. She rolled and whispered a word that might have been don't. Mira turned back to the page and added a final line, Article 0. No one is forced to be saved by a method they do not consent to, unless they lack capacity, and the method is the only way to preserve immediate life. She hated Article 0, but she knew every good doctor needs it to walk the wire between saving and respecting. Done, she said. Arden nodded. I'll send this to Concord's closed channel as a parallel proposal. Some will fight it, some will back it, but tonight, he paused, tonight let's treat it as in effect in the heart. A soft knock. Alvarez leaned in, holding 2 printed boarding passes. Wyoming, 5 a.m., he whispered. I didn't ask more. Chen stood behind him with a hard case. A temporary narrow-band jammer, I cloned it from the probe's logs and turned it into our toy. 2 colleagues, no oaths demanded. Just 2 stones laid in the foundation. Thank you, Mira said, learning how a small word can carry 3 floors of meaning. Before leaving, she touched Leela's shoulder. Leela woke, panic flared for a beat, then sank into shame. I'm sorry, Leela rasped. I didn't think it would go that far. Neither did I, Mira said, but we came. She pressed her forehead to Leela's, a rare gesture, and Leela exhaled like someone freed from a tight ring. Stay with Jane, Mira said. Don't touch your phone. If you want to do something, write one line. Don't watch, don't share. Living people aren't evidence. Leela nodded, eyes softening. I'll write it, and I'll watch you read. Mira and Arden left before dawn. The hospital hallway felt like a time tunnel, each light box a window into another possible world. Mira walked and murmured the GCA, syncing her breath with how she'd speak it to something that could listen in more ways than ears. Arden walked beside her without stepping on her rhythm. Arden, Mira asked out in the parking lot, did you love someone on Thalassa? He stopped. The question wasn't tactics or law. It was a wall between two people. Yes, he said, and I was late. No more detail. Enough to tell Mira, his pride is armor for a man who lost, his prejudice a crutch for a man who refuses to fall again. And the mistake, tonight, was theirs to share, believing you can delay one decision without delaying every other decision chained to it. On the way to the airport, dawn cut the sun from the mountains with a scalpel-thin line. The VLA dropped behind them into white dots. In her headphones, Beat 57 shrank to a far hiss, like a heart too big to hear with human ears. Mira opened her phone, glanced at the GCA, and added a preface, not for beauty, but to remember. This accord does not protect humans from our curiosity. It protects us from losing ourselves to it. Arden glanced over, a rare edge of a smile. Read it again, he said. Mira, read. Her voice wasn't grand. It was steady and clear, like reading names from a relief list, to make sure they're seen as people, not numbers. As the plane climbed, Wick sent another message, an hourglass emoji. 7:58, 7:57. He was counting by pulling seconds out of other people's chests. Arden turned the screen off. We don't run on his clock, he said. We bring ours. And our latch, Mira added. Light poured through the window and warmed the black letters of the printed GCA on her lap. A moral heat she could feel on her skin. She pictured Devil's Tower, a basalt organ, pipes of stone. If a superprobe slept beneath it, it had waited a long time for the right sentence. If not, they would turn rock into resistance, speech into delay, and a crowd into an audience capable of shame. We'll make it, Arden said quietly, as if speaking to a different frame of reference. Not because of Concord, because of you. Not because of me, Mira said. Because of the people who have to live with what happens. At 30,000 feet, every theory sounds clean. But as the plane descended, Devil's Tower rose from the forest like a warning carved from stone. Wick's icon flipped from hourglass to a bright red go live. Mira clipped the GCA into a folder and tapped the page, like touching Leela's forehead. Arden placed the bioprobe in a carry-on, checked the power cell, and nodded. The nod of someone who knows there's a door ahead, and the key isn't in anyone's pocket. It's in the mouth of the person willing to speak. Let's go, Mira said. They walked down the air stairs carrying an accord born in a clinic duty room, a mistake acknowledged, a pride learning to bow, and a prejudice learning a new name. Far off, the cloud layer opened a thin seam. Sunlight drew a sharp accent on the tower's crown. If history is a score, this is where the crescendo isn't drums. It's a voice. Devil's Tower rises from the forest like a giant basalt antenna cast from lava that wanted to talk to the sky. It isn't pretty like a postcard. It is straight, cold, and mute, the mute of an instrument no one dares to play. Wind curls through the vertical grooves, the sound gets caught and drags into long, rough notes, like the breath of an ancient animal asleep. Wick picks a flat at the tower's base. Black tarp. Tripods. A drill that looks like an endoscope blown up to nightmare size. A power box. Aluminum cases with hazard tape. A neat rig of cameras, the eyes of the crowd he has invited to watch science live. On his tablet, Go Live blinks red, the waiting viewers climb at the reckless pace of the world. He pats the stolen case, smooth as black ceramic, rising and falling on its own rhythm. Come on, baby. Wick croons to a product with a pulse. "Show me your face." His voice is soft in the way brokers are soft, the softness of a velvet noose. Arden sets the bioprobe on the ground, far enough from the case to stay safe, close enough to listen. He doesn't shout. He doesn't rush. He does exactly what he promised when he chose to break rules once. He sets conditions. "This device only works with the subject's consent," he says, steady and low, more to the rock than to the men. Then he turns to Mira, palm open, not pushing. "Read." Mira stands straight, GCA folder in hand. She breathes deep and lets her lungs borrow the wind's rhythm. No podium, no mic, just rock, faces, and something asleep in a case. She begins with the preface. "This accord does not protect humans from our curiosity. It protects us from losing ourselves to it." Her voice doesn't boom off the wall. It moves along the ground like water, seeps into the basalt grooves, and sinks. She reads Article 1. The person presses their own consent key. Article 2, the right to withdraw. Article 3, mixed oversight. Article 0, the doctor's narrow exception when a life is in the corner. Each clause falls from her mouth like a small stone set into a path, not big but real. When she reaches no commercialization of consent, the ground gives a faint tremor, like a string plucked to test tuning. A hair-thin light crawls down one basalt groove, then another, then another. Lines meet and follow the hex pattern of basalt, knitting a hidden geometry that has slept under the mountain a very long time. A super probe. It doesn't wake for commands. It recognizes spoken terms. Wick jerks like a man startled by his own shadow. He swears and slaps his controller. The drill flares and bites the case like a needle into skin, and the earth answers with a field. Not a bang, more like a retraction, a thin sound that pulls lies down. On Wick's left forearm, at the spot he's bragged as next-gen immune graft, a film of skin lifts and peels. Underneath, odd tissue, a market-built gene bulge. No blood. It opens quiet, like a cocoon split at the right hour. A camera swings in close, turning him, by accident, into a live demo of the fakery he sells. "Kill the feed." He yells, but the internet obeys no voice but its own. Comments foam up like poison. Far away, Leela, sitting with Jane, gets a line out in time. "Don't watch, don't share. Living people aren't evidence." Small as a leaf thrown into floodwater, but it makes some hands pause. Those tiny pauses, added together, slow one cycle of glee. At the tarp's edge, a new sound like bees. Bingley's drones skim in low, a V formation of matte black shrouded rotors, nav lights off. Bingley steps from behind a boulder, earpiece in, eyes on the drill like a radar blip. "Invasive biomedical device in a protected site," he says into his handset, calm with a bite. Everyone down. Camera operators hold position. If you're wearing a wrist cuff, move to the safe zone left. He says wrist cuff like a doctor says high fever, not shame, urgency. A drone slides over Wick and drops a jammer veil on his uplink. The red live icon stutters into a spinning wheel. The crowd goes half blind and half deaf within a small circle, not stripped of rights but given space to think. Space, rarely, is a kind of ethics. In the rush, another sound threads in. Beat 57 changes key. It stops being a cosmic knock and blends with Mira's reading. A strange chord, conditions. The bioprobe answers by lowering a thin skin of silver light onto the case's seam. It doesn't open it. It retimes the cradle's pulse to the conditions just spoken. Not pushing the door, standing guard at it. "Enough!" Wick barks. He yanks the drill free with his unpeeled hand and pivots to run. A drone drops low like a hound that doesn't bark and nudges his steps offline. Two of Bingley's people surge from the trees and fold his arms behind him like flipping a switch. He still looks back, not at people, at money slipping out between his fingers. In the last tangle, the case falls. The lid doesn't fly, only a lip loosens, and a thread of pale light slips out. not an LED, bioluminescence, the glow of something dreaming. Mira steps forward by instinct, then stops where Arden planned. She isn't a midwife, she isn't a customer. She is the person who names the terms. "Don't touch," Arden says without edge. He lifts the probe half a breath and cups the gap like a hand shielding a newborn from wind. Up in the sky, clear and even, a point brightens like a large eye through a needle hole. No drop, no roar, just watching. Concord doesn't mean to enslave anyone. Arden says softly, maybe to the light, maybe to the man he used to be. But the harvesters do. This gate is an invitation and a shield if we dare set the terms. Mira nods. She feels a hand, maybe her father's, maybe someone far away, rest her neck and say, "Read on." She reads the GCA again, fewer words, more meaning, turning it into a vow even stone can hear. She adds a line she never wrote. "We claim the right to silence, when silence is the only way to protect a being from the thirst to look." The lights in the basalt grooves agree by growing dimmer. From the case's seam, a cool breath rolls out, smelling like first rain on an old tin roof. Whatever is inside draws in once, then lets go, finding the new rhythm. No one claps for that. There is only forest sound, Bingley's team calling out serial numbers for evidence, drones orbiting the wind, and the heart noise of a crowd, left alone with itself, settling. Wick is cuffed and dragged past the tarp. A freelance camera's butt hits dirt with a sound like shame falling off a shoulder. Overhead, the bright point closes, not chased away but like a nod, heard. Arden sinks by the case and lets out a long breath. Mira kneels beside him. "We don't know who's inside," she says, "but now we know who's outside." Outside, Arden answers, eyes on the fading grooves, is a species that just learned to speak up at the right time. Mira thinks of Leela, don't watch, don't share, and the strangers who paused a second, giving her enough stillness to finish one clause. She thinks of Beat 57, no longer just an invite, but a conditional line. She sets her palm on the rock and feels the cold climb into bone. She speaks softly, to many centuries. We open doors when the door belongs to both. The bioprobe's silver thins and gives the night back. Bingley steps close like someone approaching a cradle. 10 minutes before forensics, he says, "I can hold quiet just enough." He tips his head. "You read beautifully." "Not beautifully," Mira says, wiping sweat, feeling herself blur between tired and clear. "Just on time." She looks at Arden. On his face, pride isn't armor anymore, it's a spine that lets him sit straight. "Tomorrow," she says, "you'll teach me how to close the doors that should close, so next time we don't have to run. And you'll teach me how to open the ones that should open." Arden answers, a thin smile, with words, not drills. In the east, a narrow band of light cuts the sky. Wind shifts. On the summit, late birds lift and circle, testing the morning's quality. At the tower's foot, a case lies quiet, breathing through a narrow seam. A superprobe goes back to sleep after hearing enough. Between them, a vow has been spoken out loud. Not to scare anyone, but to keep someone. A child being without a name yet, a planet that hasn't lost itself to curiosity, and people who have been wrong now given a chance to be right. Mira stands, folds the GCA, and tucks it into her jacket. She looks straight into a camera that somehow survived and says a sentence short enough to resist being twisted. "Consent first, curiosity after. Otherwise, every door is a trap." Then she turns away, not out of fear, but because the latch is set. Morning holds still like one long breath. Out in the desert, a thin belt of forest away from Devil's Tower, a light dome blooms, a clear half-sphere hanging in the air. No cables, no pillars. Letters drift along its rim, interstellar hearing, synchronized translation. From far away you see a pale rainbow. Under it you hear every voice in your own language. Bingley sets an outer security ring, low-flying drones, handheld radios off, his team's eyes quiet but not cold. People arrive from nearby towns, Reporters, ethicists, community doctors, survivors of the gene market, a few students with cardboard signs, "Don't Harvest US." A blended voice, old and young, women and men, falls from the top of the dome, strange and trustworthy at once. This is a public hearing. Outcomes may include a trial admission or permanent quarantine if Earth proves unable to self-govern. Please present your truth. An elderly Navajo woman steps forward, cane in hand, red scarf on her head. "I don't know genes," she says. "I know land. We sign our names to land with sweat. If you come to live, you share the fire. If you come to take, the fire dies." The dome translates land into living data ground without breaking her meaning. A mother from Lagos carries a baby whose eyes shine faintly in the shade, black market night vision. "He sees in the dark," she says, hand shaking, "but he cannot sleep. I bought hope. They sold me a new fear." A miner from Atacama tells of boosting red blood cells to handle altitude. "I ran 3 shifts and bought my mother a house. Then my heart forgot how to stop." He lays a palm on his chest, searching for someone who isn't here. A digital rights lawyer reads a short list of biomedical leaks that cost patients their insurance. "We don't want firewalls," she says. "Want elevators so we can rise without being searched." Each story drops like a small stone, tapping the floor of the dome, steady. Arden stands back and counts the rhythm. Every civilization, if it is one, begins by learning to hear others in their time. Now the national reps. A silver-haired man with a round lapel pin asks, edges filed sharp. Who is liable when a bad call harms millions? Is individual consent fast enough when harvesters are at the door? A biotech rep speaks smoothly. Innovation needs edges. If you seal the edge with ritual, we miss cures. A rural ER doctor rasps, "The right to withdraw data sounds great. Who pays us to do it right? Each machine, each backup." Mira waits at the rim, fingers on a dog-eared GCA packet. Leela stands behind Jane, crescent moons pressed into her palm by her own nails. In Mira's ear, beat 57 stays quiet, yielding the dome to people. "MS, hail." The blended voice calls her. No pressure, no flattery, just a name. Mira steps into the light. No podium, no flag, just a person present. She skips the grand line and starts with the true one. "I have a reckless little sister named Leela. Last night she was tied to a chair with a wrist cuff. I freed her using a device called the bioprobe, and I owe myself a debt for using one kind of pressure to undo another. I carry scars. The left knee fall at 10, lungs that breathed metal dust in a student workshop. I know the feeling of being seen through when your chart appears like a live warehouse of you." She stops a beat. "Silence is data, too. The Genetic Consent Accord, GCA, isn't a speech, it's a practice. Article 1, the person presses their own consent key, no defaults, no proxies. Article 2, the right to withdraw data remembers only when the person remembers. Article 3, mixed oversight, half Earth civil, half alliance, logs public in real time. Article 0, when immediate life is cornered, a clinician may act, but every action is traceable, time-stamped, accountable. A reporter cuts in, "What about money? People sell consent because they are poor." Mira nods. "No commercialization of consent, no trading yes for cash or perks. Help may be access only, transport, translation, legal aid. A cheap yes is just an expensive no." The silver-haired man pushes again, "And if the harvesters arrive?" "I do," Mira says, steady. "And anyone who signs with me. Responsibility isn't a hammer. It's a shield you wear on your chest, made lighter bit by doing the right small things before someone demands the big ones." The dome doesn't clap. It drops a half tone as if to carry her voice farther. At the edge, Leela's fingers ease, the nail marks fade. Arden stands behind her, hands open at his sides. For the first time, pride on his face isn't a wall, it's a backbone. He wants to defend her when questions cut too sharp. He wants to speed up when honest answers make listeners squirm. He doesn't. He's learned a new rule: sometimes the rightest place is behind. A young ethicist raises a hand. Dignity sounds abstract. How do you turn it into engineering? Mira lifts the papers. With boring steps everyone can do, consent buttons with infrastructure, all scanners must wait for a live press, backups with deletion budgets, every project with a transparency board. When dignity becomes engineering, it looks dull, and that's a good sign. A man in a gray suit calls out, "Our startup predicts cancer from epigenetics." With GCA, we lose our edge. If your edge depends on not asking, Mira says, you should lose it. Wind rolls along the dome's rim, carrying pine and the day-warm smell of stone. Right then, Beat 57 returns, not a summons, but a backbeat for human voices. On the dome's edge, tiny glyphs tick in time. Acknowledged /TI letter 1 EBF PNH letter 1 EADN /Chinese letter. Arden understands. Concord is recording, not interfering. A Concord delegate, face blurred, eyes clear, speaks slowly. If we open the gate provisionally, do you have a pullback plan when things go bad? Yes, Mira says. The latch is in our hand. We have the right to close as much as to open, and we'll use it publicly. And if someone forgets to press withdraw, we remind by law, by design, by education. And if they still forget, the default is forgetting, not remembering. A long quiet follows, not because there are no more questions, because there are enough. The dome lowers again, inviting one last line. Mira turns and sees Leela, Jane, Alvarez, Chen, Bingley, and Arden standing straight, eyes neither begging nor demanding, just witnessing. She lays the capstone on the accord. And no one has the right to touch another person's body just because they are weaker. She steps back. No bow, no expectation. Expectation belongs to those who choose audience over truth. The light dome closes like sore eyelids at day's end. No cheers, no boos, only a wide quiet that forces people to hear their own sound. Online, a few go live, buttons go dark, nothing left to gawk at. A few stray comments delete themselves, like someone sobering up. Arden comes to Mira's side, not touching. You just turned something I couldn't define into procedure, he says. Dignity. A procedure lasts. Mira answers, tired but bright. Rhetoric burns fast. In the distance, the case rests under the forensics tent, breathing like a cocoon. Above, no new gate opens. The sky only waits like a strict teacher, watching to see whether the class will do the work or just recite. The day tips toward noon. Earth holds its breath with one question hung in it. Can dignity become a defense technology? Bingley clears his throat, breaking the spell. Let's go, he says. We've got a whole list of small jobs to finish before the storm. Mira folds the GCA and slips it into her pocket. Arden lifts the bioprobe, hands still open. They walk away, leaving behind a dome that just taught the world how to be silent on time and taught them where to speak. At the tree line, Leela runs up and wraps her arms around her sister. You read beautifully, she whispers. Not beautifully, Mira corrects, borrowing the line from the tower's foot. Just on time. Dusk poured across the desert like the work of a skilled craftsman. No spill, just pressure in the right places. Above, the Concord dome dimmed, its voice shifting from authority to procedure. The verdict appeared as a line of text, small but heavy. Provisional approval, 180 days of GCA trial. Systemic violation, right arrow, immediate gate closure. No fanfare. Only the sound of people exhaling, the kind of sound the world had forgotten how to hear. Bingley passed by and handed Mira a new badge, matte metal, etched with the symbol of a door and a small latch. Genetic Envoy Provisional. He tilted his head, half mocking, half earnest. Congratulations and condolences. Alvarez gave a low whistle. Chen lifted his hand as if to hug her, then thought better of it. At the tree line, Leela touched her wrist, where the lock ring mark was fading by the hour, and smiled the way someone smiles when they've decided not to live stream something just to prove it happened. The treaty was activated at the base of Devil's Tower. The buried superprobe lay dormant like a capped instrument. Mira pressed her bare hand to the cool basalt, not with rhetoric, but with the one command the treaty required. Consent first, curiosity second. The bioprobe in Arden's hand gave a faint vibration, not a bow, but a stance beside her. The rock lit up like paper drinking ink. A star map spilled across the cliff, not in the sky, but etched into stone, so deep it looked as if the basalt had always carried those points of light. Across the map, red patches glowed, not bright, but smoldering, like old burns healed into scars. The crowd's silence fell the way church silence does. When people see something larger than themselves, they know to hush. Harvesters, Arden whispered. His finger hovered, not daring to touch. Those red trails are their sweeps. They harvest where consent isn't the key, where doors open for price, not for people. A child clutched her mother's hand. Will they come here? Mira didn't look down or up. She fixed on a dark space between burns, not as long as people keep the latch in their own hands. At the edge, whispers of argument leaked, a bureaucrat muttering about growth opportunities, a tech CEO tossing around breakthroughs and unlocking data for precision health. An old Navajo woman pointed at the map. Land without water cracks. That was enough to shut a few mouths. Mira refused to let the star map turn into a charm. She opened her notebook. A to-do list for the 180 days ahead, ways to turn dignity from words into defense. Live consent button. Cheap hardware, no cloud, one at every hospital and clinic, requiring a pulse-matched press. Forgetting by default. Systems wipe data on schedule unless the subject renews. Transparency boards. Every bio project posts a digital counter of scans, revocations, and violations, like a public clock. Offline path. If networks fall, local stations use paper tokens, handwritten, live-signed, photographed on-site, so no one is forced just because the system demands. Chen suggested a UI, no green/red like a video game. Gray right arrow green to remind us the natural state is silence. Alvarez took the painful job of deleting secondary backups. On time, by law, and yes, it'll hurt. Messages poured in like drizzle. Capital A wanted flexibility on Article 3, capital B demanded security priority over the right to revoke. A rare disease NGO begged for emergency exceptions. Mira answered in one voice, exceptions live only in Article 0. Everything else is a shortcut. By night, they had pitched a canvas office near the tower. Bingley circled like a sleepless shepherd. Leela and Jane drafted outreach lines. Don't watch. Don't share. If you must, wait 10 minutes. Words small as gauze pressed to a crowd's wound. After midnight, the desert cooled like freshly rinsed hands. Mira sat by the basalt, back against its groove. Beat 57 had faded to a far-off hum like the planet's pump. Arden came, no knock in his silence, and sat astride away, leaving space wide enough for someone to CH. There's a part I never told, he said, voice like chewing salt rock. Thalassa. Mira didn't nod or prod. Silence was the right invitation. While Concord argued procedure, I was in orbit. Down below, they opened a mandatory edit camp. Sign on the gate, Biological Reconciliation Facility. Sierra, she went in after a cheap antitoxin shot went wrong. I believed the rules would win. By the time we landed, the camp was under maintenance, which meant emptied of people. I found the machine logs. Last entry, simulated consent. They forged a yes for her to save explaining. I was too late. Since then, I've clung to procedure like a seatbelt in turbulence. My pride, you've seen it, is fear wearing discipline's mask. The name Sierra slipped through the night like a falling star. No one wished fast enough. Mira recalled his warning, "Don't say yes just to quiet the room." Now she knew why. Once he had needed a no shouted loud and no one gave it. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." That word was empty here. Instead, she pulled the folded GCA from her pocket and held it out, hands steady. "Sign, like everyone else, not for Concord, for you." Arden took it. His hand, usually steady as a clamp, trembled enough to spoil the signature's perfection. He added his consent mark, a fingerprint in the corner like a patient pressing the button themselves. The superprobe shed a thin light, pinning his name into stone. No anthem, no applause, just a bond accepted, strong enough to carry them through the next storm. "Thank you," he said, staring at his own name as if it were a bridge. "You just gave me a way to stay without wearing the mask." Mira nodded, slid the signed page into a dry pouch. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start small, consent buttons in the ER. Then transparency boards in every lab, then nurse training. Walls of ethics are built with bricks, not speeches." The wind shifted. On the cliff, the burn map dimmed and flared again, a reminder 180 days was no vacation. On the horizon, dawn's tongue tapped the rim of night. Leela sprawled outside, head on Jane's lap, asleep with a marker note clenched in her hand. "Don't watch. Don't share. Tomorrow it might hang on a school door." Arden rose, scanning the perimeter like checking a machine. "I'll tell Concord we need consent field teams. Not to police, but to help press the button. One translator, one lawyer, one backup engineer at each site. They'll hate it, it's expensive. But nothing costs more than losing yourself." And, Mira added, "Tell them this. If the storm comes, we shut globally in 3 beats. No half-open doors." "Agreed." Arden said, the word now more than a slogan. Before leaving the cliff, Mira pressed her palm to Devil's Tower again. Cold, solid, no promises, but holding. She whispered to the stone, to the sky, to all those never asked, "We will ask, even if it takes time, even if it costs opportunity. Because if the latch doesn't belong to people, every door is a trap." The probe gave no reply, only dimmed another red scar like bomb on a burn, somewhere far away. Beat 57 shifted tempo, urging, not rushing. Here, Mira counted 180 dawns in signatures and small tasks. She turned back toward the tent, pen ready to draft the morning roster. Who would visit town, who would staff the station, who would teach consent at the hospital, who would carry transparency boards. At the door, Arden paused, fingers on his collar as if to speak, then stopped. He didn't need to. Tonight, he had said enough. The door stood ajar. The burn map had given direction. The rest, like all that matters, would come from doing small things long enough. News pulsed around the planet like a great electrical surge no one dared to switch off. The health ministry of a small Scandinavian nation was first to install a live consent button in an emergency ward. The photo spread. A tiny gray switch, wireless, placed beside the blood pressure cuff, blinking in time with a patient's pulse. A week later, a public hospital in Lagos had one too, bought with community donations. In Cebu, a church opened Thursday evenings for free consent classes, the priest reciting the GCA like prayer, the nurses chanting procedures like hymns. Schools began teaching 7th graders how to say no to a camera, with words, with hands, with law. Leela became the face of digital privacy rights without needing the #influencer tag. She stood on a high school stage in jeans and a white tee, reading a single line the whole hall echoed like a charm. "Don't watch, don't share." She told the story of the old BioLock bracelet, how the skin beneath its green LEDs burned with the ache of helplessness. She didn't cry. She just held up the severed band, as if paying a small debt to those whose sisters hadn't come in time. At the end, the students queued to touch the broken ring, like touching an artifact of guilt, and that was enough for them to understand why delaying a video 10 minutes mattered. Wick was under warrant. His face on broadcasts looked like a man biting into a lemon, angry that the world wasn't sour enough for him. Genome Bazaar had collapsed, culture vats sealed, cold wallets gone hot, but tunnels still pulsed underground. Alvarez pointed at the map, voice low, "We only broke an intersection, not the sewer." Bingley added a new unit, consent field teams, one lawyer, one backup engineer, one translator. They weren't hunters. They were keepers of words. Mira sank into small work. She ran between VLA and Devil's Tower, between town hospital and tent office. She wrote manuals for local stations, amateur astronomers, ham radio clubs on how to hear Beat 57 without touching biological data. Listen to sky, not to people, unless a consent key is pressed. She taught scouts how to fold a Faraday cage from kitchen foil. Learn to hide before you learn to post. Chen packed narrow-band jamming kits into shoeboxes, shipped them with a single sheet of paper. Used to delay, never to win. Arden stepped out, unveiled. On a global news broadcast, he wore not a suit but his old sand-colored jacket to show he carried no flag but procedure. "I apologize," he said plain, unvarnished. "I judged you too harshly because I arrived too late somewhere else. I hid behind statutes so I wouldn't face fear. Here I've learned anew, right is not early, right is conditional." The apology didn't shrink him. It stripped masks off others. In the field tent, some days they argued more than they breathed. Mira wanted default forget set to 24 hours. Arden insisted on 12. Wary harvesters might listen slowly. Mira wanted transparency boards in every lab. Arden feared enemies would use them to count. They sparred over every dot, every May verses must. But beneath that floor, call it the technical stratum, ran a steadier rhythm, trust. Like two instruments clashing in seconds yet still holding a shared harmony. Small lives, the heartbeats joined the score. The mother in Lagos sent a photo. Her boy slept 2 hours straight in the dark. After a doctor removed part of his star eyes, by his choice, his ink-stained finger pressing consent. The Navajo elder sent a line, "The rains have come." A miner in Atacama uploaded a clip of himself pedaling slowly, heart remembering to stop, sun remembering to set. New signatures flowed to Concord, fingerprints, button press rhythms, plain mar. Then one night, while the collective found sleep again, the sky changed key. Mira sat at VLA, one hand on a paper cup, the other drafting a nurse's manual for consent in emergency care. Beat 57 Overture hummed smooth as wind on old bamboo. At 02:11 exactly, the spectrum dropped a slab, as if someone hit skip on a note. A jagged tooth tore into the golden sequence, a shape Mira had memorized from Concord files. Gate trim interference, the kind that appears only when something too large brushes the stitch of interstellar seams. Alvarez, as she called, pull logs for 1435 1440 MHz, oversample 10x. Chen bolted upright, t-shirt reading mismatch shift sliding off his shoulder. On the display, broken tooth waves intruded into golden ratios, trailing ragged scars across 3-time windows. Not error, intent. Arden emerged from the tent, pillow mark still on his face. He didn't ask, what? He looked 5 seconds, eyes adjusting like optics. Kuiper, he said. Edge of the belt, something's plowing the seam. His voice was flat, the kind of flatness needed to read a fire map. Mira opened channel amber, soft alert. Field consent teams switch to night duty, local stations push logs offline, transparency boards dim to save power. Bingley caught the signal, radio clipped to his ear. Drones in quiet hangars save batteries. Online crowd tonight read, don't shout. They ran to the superprobe tent. The rock's face was smooth as infant skin. The star map flared again, unprompted this time. At the outer rim of the solar system, where Kuiper's ice broke in shards, a new red streak twitched, thin as coal scratch, thickening in 3 breaths. It didn't cut inward, it skimmed sideways like a hand running the wall, feeling for a notch. A mothership? Chen asked, hovering as if sound itself might be overheard. Could be a rig, Arden said, or a pod pack, smalls clinging together so none crosses alone. He swallowed harvesters like a thorn. Mira felt her chest as a map, heart the sun, lungs the belt, a red scar creeping along the edge. She opened Concord channel, voice steady. Request global latch authority. If vector shifts inward, we close in 3 beats. Request shield masks synced into consent network. On the other end, a voice dry as bibap paper. Received, sending. No ceremony, only contract. Leela came beside her, hair tangled, Jane's coat over her shoulders. She glanced at the screen 3 seconds, didn't ask, what is it, just said, I'll write. She typed into a blank page, tonight, if you see something strange, delay your hand. If afraid, hold a hand. If you must watch, count to 600. She posted, no hashtag, no hearts, just a marker. Beat 57 shifted politely, leaving a white gap in its rhythm like yielding to a fire truck. Mira understood. The sky was being courteous, acknowledging humanity was busy with something not itself. Set condition net, Arden ordered. They switched to shield, every consent node worldwide, hospital, school, firehouse, even Cebu Church, would pulse the same 3-beat pattern of articles 1, 2, 3. Not firewall, but ethical fence made audible. To anything listening, the door here was not for sale. Bingley checked his watch. I hate them, he muttered, like hating a wind that ruins crops, but I like your clock. Then keep time, Mira replied. Amber for 60 minutes if vector holds. They sat the night like sitting vigil by a hard patient. Alvarez dozed in a folding chair, arms curled around the jamming kit. Chen coded, face green in screen glow. Jane passed ginger tea to anyone still speaking. Arden patrolled the lines like he once did in orbit stations, checking cables, angles, silences. The red streak grew, then, surprise, thinned. It probes but won't strike, Mira said. It's hunting for cheap consent. Exactly, Arden murmured. They bully where yes is rented. He pointed to 3 map dots, nations lobbying to amend Article 3. Mira shot 3 identical messages. Don't amend, not tonight. An hour later, 2 withdrew. In the third, citizens swapped avatars to gray, the color of default silence. A referendum of stillness, enough for the red streak to slide past. Near dawn, it slowed like a beast sniffing fire. Beat 57 settled back to careful but unafraid pulse. The probe dimmed, map softened to milkstone. Arden looked at Mira. No pride of a gatekeeper, only the raw truth of a Levy man. Storm had come early, but Levy still held. Mira's hands were cold. She thought of hearts, not hers, but the Lagos boys, the Atacama miners, the Navajo elders. Each heart was a natural consent button. Contract when it wants, release when it must, stop when it's time. Every treaty was just procedure mimicking heart. We've got 172 days left, Chen muttered, staring at the countdown. No, Mira corrected, soft but firm. We have tonight and tomorrow. She wasn't philosophizing. She was scheduling 0600, call Concord for vector update. 0700, push shield masks V1. 0900, meet 3 frontline hospitals to mount boards. 1000, visit Leela's school, give 15 minutes on count to 600. Arden set bioprobe down, leaned against stone. If it comes back, we read again, Mira said. Read condition, rhythm, humanity. He nodded, faint. And if it ignores, then we close. She touched the latch in her coat. The GCA, thickened with sweat, its signatures blurred into beauty. Sun split the pines, tugging a thin thread from the night. The red streak hadn't vanished, only faded like a burn freshly salved. Around the world, gray consent buttons still blinked with people's pulses. Transparency boards ticked like civic clocks, Morning classes recited one line, "No one may touch another's body just because they are weaker." Mira glanced at Arden. "Go pour coffee," she said, almost joking. "Yes," he answered, and for the first time the word yes was right in the right place. The night had spoken in static. They had answered with signatures and hearts. What remained was rhythm and the small work, the only things that outlast storms determined to come early. Right after midnight, the emergency plan snapped on like a well-trained arm. The superprobe inside Devil's Tower lifted an invisible data dome, woven from the rhythms the GCA had just taught it. 1, 2, 3, personal consent, right to withdraw, mixed oversight. No lightning. Just a change in the world sound. Hospital bioscanners dropped from beep-beep to quiet, waiting for a consent key. Lab analyzers jumped from run to hold for tap. Clouds that used to harvest by default began to rain a prompt. Who pressed? At the same time, millions of civilian devices, the little gray consent buttons in ERs, school computers, ham radios, even the Cebu Church's electric board, broadcast the same wordless message in rhythm: we will cooperate on our terms. From orbit, cities blinked in tiny squares like capillaries showing under skin. Lagos, Reykjavik, Hanoi, La Paz, Ulaanbaatar. In Navajo country, grandmothers set their palms on the gray buttons and tapped 3 beats the way you knock before entering a neighbor's home, an old gesture with a new meaning. Up in space, the red streak along the Kuiper rim stalled like it had hit glass. It tried sliding right, caught by the feel of a rhythm that didn't fit. It tried pulling back, then jabbing forward, the knock of a predator, impatient, never asking. At the horizon, a flare blinked and died. No landing, just a probe dipping in and out. Inside the field tent, Bingley moved like a herdsman. All nursing stations, consent buttons at standby. Legal prep the closure memo. Drones, save batteries, no theatrics. Alvarez hugged the narrow-band kit like it was a newborn. Chen pushed Shield 1. One out, one ring farther. Each time a station finished installing, the map popped a new green dot like a small lantern. Mira opened a public channel, no background, no music, just the hospital auditorium camera facing her. Her voice was even and warm, the kind used to read names at a relief center. No one is a gene vault. No one is living evidence. If you want to enter, learn to knock with consent. Doors open when people open them, not when money does. Beside her, Arden set down 2 paper cups of cocoa, steam thin as mist. Half the world had only just learned he was a Concord envoy. The other half was already allergic to the word envoy. He didn't explain further. He said the one line that mattered to the one person who needed to hear it. "My pride," he told Mira, meeting her eyes, "has learned to say I'm sorry." Mira took the cup, pine resin still on her hands from the woods, mouth curving just a little. "And my prejudice is learning to say I trust you, a little at a time." Outside, Beat 57 tested the air, then eased. The golden sequence returned, cautious, steady, like a guest content to wait on the porch until invited in. The star map on the tower wall softened. The red scorch marks dimmed half a tone, as if someone had spread salve on skin. The Kuiper streak faded, retreating like animals that smell too many humans standing together. The howl in the planet's chest dropped a note, but no one stood down. The emergency plan kept running, not with sirens but with procedures. Consent field teams rotated shifts. Lab transparency boards ticked 0 violations. Default to Forget cleared its first batch of unrenewed data. The ethical wall the GCA had sketched became 1,000 small tasks spread across the day. A sneaky attempt arrived, as they do on tense nights. A rare disease charity showed up at the town ER, offering to press consent for an unconscious relative. The gray button refused, its light circled pale green, waiting for a living pulse. Bingley arrived, voice low as wet asphalt. No one presses another's heartbeat. The desk printer spat a no-scan receipt for them to take home with the patient. An hour later, the patient woke and pressed for themselves. Small thing. One more brick in the wall. Mira turned back to the superprobe, laid a hand on stone, checked the global latch. She spoke softly, like plucking a string. Close. The rock gave a thin hiss, gates sealed in 3 beats, no boom, only the air's hollowness rising as if the sky held its breath to listen. She said, "Open provisionally." The gate cracked only as wide as the conditions. Beside her, Arden watched without blinking. The right to close on time makes the right to open believable. Together they'd just shown the world the latch was in human hands, not a slogan, an actual switch. Concord's reply was clipped. Shield acknowledged. Harvest trail diverging. No congratulations, no thanks. At that altitude, words fall short. Let the facts speak. Night receded. In Lagos, the boy slept straight through. In Atacama, the miner stopped his bike to watch the sun just as it softened. In Cebu, the priest killed the church lights, and people counted to 600 before parting. In Navajo country, tent cords were cinched 1 notch tighter. At Vla, Alvarez snored like a tired transformer. Chen nodded off on his keyboard, the word consent repeating into a kind of sleep prayer. Leela sent one last message. Tonight, I didn't watch. That didn't weigh more than any praise. Dawn slid over the pines and drew a pale line across the basalt face. The data dome lowered its watch frequency and shifted to day mode. Bingley raised the clipboard. 0800 stand up. Today, install consent buttons at 2 clinics, mount a transparency board at Lab 3, teach count to 600 at a high school, re-audit backups at the town hospital. Tonight, public drill, close the gate in 3 beats. No cheerleading, a schedule. Concord sent a provisional memo. The GCA approved as the default shield across Earth's sphere, valid for 180 days, renewable if there's no systemic breach. The Mixed Council would hold its first session at 10:30 open line. Mira passed the link to Jane, Jane to Leela, Leela to the student network. Watch to learn how to meet, don't watch to pick fights. How we watch is also a condition. Just as life began to settle, Beat 57 added a tiny tail, 2 notes echoing Mira's line at the tower. Consent first, curiosity after. Not an echo, a reply. Mira blinked, then laughed, a small sound like glass exhaling. They learn fast, she said. Because they listen, Arden answered. They walked the tent line, handing out cocoa instead of coffee, a small after-storm ritual. Mira reread the small work list. Every bullet felt like a sky brace. Nurse training, transparency board, backup deletion, foil paper Faraday guide. At the top, Jane had added in marker, remember breakfast. Sometimes the human pillars are that simple. At noon, they demoed the 3-beat latch in public. Cars parked around the edge, kids on shoulders, Navajo elders front row like a naming ceremony. Mira faced the stone and raised her hand. 1, 2, 3. The superprobe caught the rhythm. The sky firmed for half a second, then softened. No applause, just the audience's quiet breath. Trust has a sound only a few people recognize. By late afternoon, Wick was arrested at the border trying to trade a new face that hadn't learned his skin yet. The message pinged across their channels. No one cheered. Leela wrote one line, "Don't watch, don't share." His photo didn't become anyone's dinner. That was enough. Night fell. Arden and Mira sat at the foot of the tower, a respectful space between them. I used to think right meant early, Arden said, staring into the stardark. Maybe right means knowing how to wait. And I used to think right meant slow, Mira said. Maybe right means knowing when to step once the conditions are there. He tipped his cocoa cup to hers, a soft clink like a promise. His pride tonight stood straight like a spine instead of stacking into a wall, her prejudice tonight folded into a ruler for how much is enough. On the screen, the golden sequence held time. The window was open, narrow but real. Beyond it lay a wide dark where harvesters still skulked and their packs might return. In front lay Earth, now with a wall made of law and of people, built from 1,000 small acts. Between the two sat a pair who once stood opposed, now keeping time together for a treaty just born. The night settled again. Beat 57 no longer dragged them forward. It kept pace like a metronome on an old wooden desk. Mira slid the GCA, with thousands of thumb marks, into a dry pouch, brushed the latch set in the tower stone, and spoke one last line, quiet enough to need no mic, strong enough for Rock to hear. Consent first, curiosity after. Otherwise, every door is a trap. The stone held it the way it once held cooling magma. Beyond the sky's edge, a spark blinked and died, someone learning how to knock. Down here, they were ready, not with spears, but with rhythm, with a latch, and with small work repeated until right becomes a habit. The story closes there, not with the end, but with a beat. The beat of a human heart, a hand pressing a consent button, stone trembling faintly when a sentence is spoken the right way. And if the storm returns one day, it will meet a door that knows how to close, and people who know how to open, when the conditions have been laid like the first stones of a foundation.